Peace. I just wanted to take a moment and elaborate a little bit about something I've been sharing over the last few days, and I'm not sure some of you've caught on to yet, but I think it's vital in terms of striving to address these no indictments that's been handed out by these grand juries that a lot of us have been upset about. We've been protesting so that we can refocus our direction in terms of things that we can do in order to resolve some of these things that's going on. Back in August of 2015, Senator Holly Mitchell of Los Angeles introduced a bill to the legislature that actually got passed in the state of California, and it was Senate Bill 227. So if you want to look that up, go on Google and look up Senate Bill 227 California, and you could also look up Holly Mitchell, Senator Holly Mitchell. Now, what this bill actually did is it restricted or banned secret grand juries from being able to weigh in on any kind of situations where you have law enforcement either using excessive force or basically murdering a person on duty. And the reason why she introduced that bill is because we've been seeing a lot of lack of transparency in that process. If you look at what happened down in Ferguson, you look at what happened in New York, you look at various other places that don't have a Senate bill that's actually in place, you have grand juries, secret grand juries, who are making decisions on whether or not to prosecute law enforcement. And when you have a secret grand jury proceeding, the prosecutor has total control over what they decide to admit as evidence, what they don't decide to admit as evidence. Is completely one-sided, and they have complete control over everything that they present to the grand jury. Now, when the grand jury makes a decision, the prosecutor has the benefit of saying, well, that was the grand jury's decision. So they're not having or taking any kind of responsibility for the fact that they're the ones that actually orchestrated all of the evidence and presented it in such a way to get what they wanted. And when you have the grand juries involved in this process, especially when they're secret, people don't have access to what was actually presented or what were the facts that were found to determine that, law enforcement is not going to be prosecuted and everything else. Now, the Senate Bill 227 in California that was introduced basically cut the grand jury out of the process of being able to weigh in on any of these type of incidents, which means the prosecutor themselves is held responsible for making a decision of whether to convict law enforcement or not. So when you put the onus back on the prosecutor, the way that it should be, now you have a lot more leverage and pressure in terms of them acting within the parameters of the law, because under other circumstances they could just sit there and be like, well, the grand jury is the one that made a decision. And come up with some bullshit about how they really didn't have a role to play in that. Take out the secret grand jury and put it right on a prosecutor, because that is an appointed position. Now you have political leverage and pressure if they're making decisions as a prosecutor that the overall body of people don't agree with. And oftentimes, people are not in a position to just act on a sense of morality or to do just things because they think it's the right thing to do. Some people, you got to strong arm their ass. You got to put pressure on them to ensure that they're going to do the right thing. And by taking the secret grand jury out of the equation, you put the onus back on the prosecutor, and now they're acting within the parameters of transparency that you necessarily won't see with a secret grand jury or anything else. Now, what am I suggesting? I'm suggesting that for those of you who really want to do something in addition to the other things that we're doing on the grassroots led level, we have to be able to organize and lobby our own state legislature to introduce or adopt similar measures as Senate Bill 227 that they've put into practice or into effect out in California. So if you're in Ohio, if you are in Pennsylvania, if you're in New York, if you're in any of these places, you can begin to organize and put pressure on your state legislature in order to put together the same type of bill that will restrict and ban secret grand juries from weighing in on these type of situations where you have law enforcement using excessive force and murdering basic civilians, you know what I'm saying? Or other officers, you know? So, and here's the thing to keep in mind as well. In terms of political pressure, you have to keep in mind that going back to what I said about sometimes people are just not doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do and you have to be able to put pressure on them. We just went through more like a local election year. So people are in office now, they're a little comfortable, you know, and you may have a certain degree of pressure or leverage because we just went through a local election. We're getting ready to go through a presidential election, which means you have leverage points there in terms of political pressure that you can put on various different candidates on a national level down to a regional level. And because of that, it is an opportune time to start asking these hard questions of people who are running for public office and lobbying to put pressure on them to say, you know, we need safeguards like this in order to ensure that there is transparency and there is a level of accountability on a legislative level for these different law enforcement officers who are using excessive force and murdering our community members. And that is something that has to be an extra added component in terms of being able to address some of the things that we see that's going on. So in all of these different states where we don't see a Senate Bill 227 like in California, we need to start organizing and putting pressure on our state legislature and representatives, or even on a local level. Put pressure on your local officials to put pressure on their state officials so that we can start putting these measures into place so that we can safeguard a lot of these things. So, you know, like I said, if you wanted to get more information about it, just go online, look up California Senate Bill 227, look up, and you will see what I'm actually talking about. So, I will, this was inspiring, empowering, and educating, and gave those of you a little bit more insight on some of the things that we can do in addition to a lot of the grassroots led movements that's going on, the Black Lives Matter movement, and everything else we're doing to resolve a lot of the stuff that's going on in our communities. Peace.